right, and welcome everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day to visit with us. We always appreciate when we got some good conversations, some fun people in our chat room. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's just get right to it. Like something in the beginning of the show, what I like to do is kind of share a little bit what's been going around on here. You know, if you've been watching the last few weeks, I've been having this ongoing battle with my Dell XPS 8300 machine, and really the problems began when I tried to hook up three 24-inch displays to the computer, and it didn't work out very well, and we got flickering on the displays. Some of them would blink off, blink back on, lose DVI signal, even though it is so not going into low power mode, just losing DVI signal and back on. Just generally not very, very usable. And after talking with Dell technical support, the initial verdict was we had an insufficient power supply, and they sent a repairman here because it is covered by warranty. One of the reasons I buy pre-built computers is for the support and so forth, because I run a business and I'm pretty doggone busy. I really want to take time out of my day to deal with this vendor, that vendor. So you know, you buy a pre-built machine, you got one call to make versus multiple. Long story short, they sent a tech here to the home, and he attempted to replace the power supply with a larger one. It would not fit in the case, so that was a no-go. We got back in touch with Dell technical support, and then the next thing was we're going to try replacing the motherboard. So I said, okay. In the interim period, I recall that the way I connected the third display was with a active DisplayPort connector that came off the approved list that ATI had published. So I had forgotten the fact that the Dell UltraSharp has a DisplayPort connector built in, and also shipped with a DisplayPort cable. So I took the adapter off, rearranged how I had the monitors connected, and lo and behold, no more flashing, no more displays going off and on. That took care of the problem. It was a defective active adapter. However, Dell was quite confident that they needed to replace the motherboard anyway, and they did. And at that time, I had ordered 16 gigabytes of RAM from Crucial. That's where I get all my memory from. Some people buy Corsair and some other name brands. I like Crucial. And so I bought 16 gigs. We upgraded the memory and swapped the motherboard last week and put the Dell back into service. And now I'm using all three displays. By the way, I've never tried Eyefinity. Although I might get around to it. This is a working machine. It's a workstation more than it is a gaming machine or anything else. It is a workstation that I can play video games on. So that's the lesson learned. Sometimes, I would have known that had I never hooked up the third display. I would have never had a problem with just the two Dell UltraSharps. A nice intro done in After Effects. Steelheart made that for me. Steelheart made the intro to answer the question in the chat room. He's just a whiz at doing this kind of thing, and one of the nicest people you'd ever want to get to know, Steelheart. So shout out to my friend Steelheart on that as well. You know the old saying, no good deed goes unpunished? I got a call a couple weeks ago from an elderly gentleman who had bought a new printer and asked if I could set it up for him. Now, typically, I don't do hardware. We're a software business where everything I do is related around selling GFI software. Thus, the logo right there, the logo. But you know what? This is a senior citizen. He needed help. He's 90 years old. And I said, you know what? I'll be happy to do it for you. Went over to his house, and he had a year-old, maybe 2-year-old, what was that? It was a compact Presario. 2 gigabytes of memory, and I think a Sempron processor, very underpowered machine. And I replaced his printer, which had a failed print mechanism, with a new one. And got it hooked up, ran the installation disk, and it wouldn't print. Just refused to print. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what was wrong, so ultimately I reached out to HP, who immediately wanted to remote into the machine. And they did, and the bottom line was that they uninstalled the driver software, and we're going to try a couple other things. At the reboot of the machine, and I had been there for a couple hours futzing around with this thing, at the end of the reboot, Arrow interface wouldn't come up, and it took forever, and I mean to get to the desktop. It was horrible, dog slow. I felt bad for the old guy. It was late. I hadn't eaten, all day. I said, look, I tell you what, I'll be back. That was on Wednesday. I said, I'll be back on Friday to finish this up for you, and we'll get it taken care of. It turned out, and this is something you got to be careful with when somebody remotes into your machine, is that remote control software uses a virtual device driver for video mirroring, is what it's called, display mirroring. And that driver did not uninstall. When I had to go into safe mode in this computer, track down the driver under video, and sure enough, there it was. Uninstalled it, rebooted the machine, Arrow came back up, and it loaded as quickly as it could. Lesson learned. And went to the HP website, downloaded basically the same driver, okay, installed it again, and this time it worked like a charm. So what should have been a 20-minute job turned into taking me about 3 hours to do. And I did not charge him any money. I didn't charge him a penny. He was a World War II veteran. I said, sir, you did your part for your country. It's time for somebody to do something, a little something for you in return. And, I just did it to help a senior citizen. No more, no less. I don't typically go out and work on machines, but it felt good to do that. So, got my show notes right here, and we got a few topics to get to. Oh, one last thing. If I unfollowed you on Twitter, I was a friend of mine. I didn't really mean to. I decided to clean up Twitter, and the reason being is I had this policy of you follow me, I follow you back, and well, Twitter became almost unusable to get through the good stuff through all the junk spam tweets. It was just horrible, and I just, for all practical purposes, quit checking Twitter because of it. And then yesterday morning, I said, you know what? No, it was Friday morning. I said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. This is just crazy. It's batshit crazy as far as I'm concerned. And I went through and did a mass unfollow. And it took quite a while to do a mass unfollow. They don't make it easy for you to do that. And I did it through the Twitter website, and it was kind of flaky on the unfollows, and it would jump. I'd unfollow somebody, and it would jump suddenly, and maybe I unfollowed them, maybe I didn't. So if I did unfollow you, take no offense, my friends, I will follow you back. I'll get back and re-add you to it. But I had to do something. It was just way out of control, with nothing but spammers and people, trying to sell you webinars and cheap cruises and discounts, and that's what Twitter, 99.9% of Twitter is about. People trying to sell you stuff in one form or another. The lesson learned is now I'm just following people. Maybe protect your tweets. That's got its pros and cons. Obviously, anytime you use the word MacBook Pro, you get bombed with people with links to win a MacBook Pro. I know. But now I'm following topics and people that are more interesting to me, and yeah, even some of them are trying to sell stuff. iPad's the same, right? But I think for the most part, I'm getting more relevant tweets to topics I'm interested in. I mean, it's just more than technology. I've got Bill Maher, I follow him, and Dennis Miller, I follow him. Some of your tech people, some people in politics, business people I follow. So I'm getting more relevant stuff that I'm interested in. But I always love to hear from my friends, and please don't be offended if I unfollowed you on Twitter. Okay. So recently I came across a product called InSync. And to kind of explain the InSync to you, it's like this. Could you replace Dropbox? Yeah, how many of us use Dropbox? I do. I've had a Dropbox account for a long time. Still got the free one. But a lot of people do. But you know what? If you have a Gmail account or a Google Apps account, InSync is a fantastic tool. And rather than sit here and try to explain all this to you, how it works, I've got this short little video I'd like to share with you. It kind of explains to you InSync, and then I thought we'd talk about it just a little bit. So here we go.
Hey guys, MKBHD here, and today I have a pretty nice tool to show you guys by the folks over at InSync. No, not the musical group, I swear. But when I first heard of InSync, I saw this. It's okay to break up with Dropbox. And I was like, whoa. Like, who do these guys think they are? I love Dropbox, And if you've never heard of Dropbox, it's this really easy to use, convenient cloud kind of storage system where you save a file on your computer and a copy of it appears on every other device you have linked to Dropbox. InSync is like Dropbox with Google Docs. So this software links your computer to your Google account. So you can throw anything in this folder and that's game, and it'll be uploaded and synced with Google Docs. So let's check out the interface. Basically, here's what it looks like on the web. It looks just like Dropbox, and you can go through all your files and folders just like you could on your computer. And just like if you double click them, if you click them here, it'll go ahead and open up that file, and it'll pop up in Google Docs. So if you have any images or things like that, they preview right by opening in Google Docs. You also have a number of things that you can do. You can hit the drop down to get a link to share the file or view other versions of it. And also you have the number of people who can view the file in the blue box on the left, and more info about the file to the right. So it's a pretty basic organized structure here. So here on the desktop you get an InSync folder that you can put all your documents in. So anything you put here gets synced with Google Docs really fast. But yeah, it operates just like a normal computer, a normal file manager on Mac or Windows. So if you change, let's say, this notepad file here, it syncs. I don't know if you saw, but really ridiculously fast. It syncs with Google. And of course, when you go to Google Docs on your web browser, you have the beautiful Google design and the neat organization of all your precious, priceless files. So glorious. So here's that text file that I changed. Unfortunately, you can't preview .txt files. That we'll go ahead and download it here, and you'll see that it is already that updated text file. This is brilliant. So why would you choose this over Dropbox? Both are on Mac and Windows. What's the difference? The short answer is storage. Both Google and Dropbox offer the first gigabyte free, but after that, Google is way cheaper, all the way. Way cheaper than Dropbox storage. I'm talking like 20 gigs for $5 a year. It's a no-brainer. So go ahead and give this video a like if you enjoyed. You can try everything out below. Happy New Year, and I will talk to all you guys.
Right there is kind of a good overview of it. I have a lot of documents and a lot of stuff. And I bought 20 gigs of storage from Google for $5 a year. And if you look at the pricing from Dropbox for that, and because you can store any kind of file in the Google on Google Docs, any kind of file. It doesn't have to just be a document, a spreadsheet, or what have you. To give you an idea, I'm going through the show notes here. Yeah. If you go with Dropbox, a 50 gig account runs you $10 a month or $120 a year. Okay? With Google, an 80 gig account runs you $20 a year, and a 200 gig account runs you $50 a year. So think about that for a minute. Well, 20 gigs for $5 is cheap for a year. any kind of file, and the way it works, and I can share it right in my screen. It basically has a client that installs on your PC or your Mac, and then you can from right there share. And the way it works, by the way, is you can have multiple Gmail accounts, and so in your document, when you install in Windows, it shows up in your document folder with your email InSync in your Gmail email address, and you can have multiple ones there, and you go into that, and there's all the folders you created in Google Apps, and then you can just drag and drop a file right there, and it'll upload it. Now, another nice feature is when you're looking through Explorer in Windows or Finder on the Mac, if you create, say, a Google Doc spreadsheet, it will show up as an Excel spreadsheet and open it with Excel locally, change you make, or then sync back to Google Docs. So, I've been using what's called Google Cloud Connect for Office, right? That allows you to collaborate, transfer, and synchronize files between Google Apps and Office. Well, by using, I think I can get away from that now with InSync. And I'm talking to other people that are discovering this service, and they really, really like it. So it's cheaper than Dropbox, works very similar in a very similar fashion, creates a permanent link that you can share, or you can share with friends, groups, etc. All your Google Gmail contacts or your Google Apps contacts as well. It's all right there. And when you install it, it comes up with a little PDF, they say, look, it doesn't take any more than 90 seconds to figure out how to use it. You get this little PDF because it's very, very simple. It's very, very basic. There's not a lot of information on their website. This is a beta product. They're going to offer, and it's basically based on their freemium model, so you're going to get to do so much for free, and then they'll have a paid version, and that's ultimately what their plan is. Even if you use Dropbox, look, Dropbox uses the Amazon S3 service, which is going to be a lot more expensive than using Google's storage service. So that's what's right there. You can set the read-write permissions on the file. You can do file sharing right there within that. You can do nested sharing. You can collaborate with Google Documents. You can leave it at any time, and all your stuff is still in your Google Docs account. There's no direct access to your files. They only store files, your file metadata, so the actual files aren't stored anywhere there. And you can get in touch with the InSync engineers directly at an email address, which is a little bit different than, say, somebody at Dropbox. Syncing is really, really a piece of cake on there. One question came up was about conflict resolution. And here's something that Dropbox really doesn't do, which is support versioning and versioning control. But in case there's a conflict, the conflict in question will be saved locally, and the latest version will be synced down, allowing you to merge them as you wish. So a great way of handling that. The ease which we can be in Windows Explorer, looking at a document, drag it there, create a share right then and there on the spot without even going into Google Apps is really, really awesome. Cirrus Minor in the chat room, Uncle Al's joined us. How are you, Uncle Al? Says, I'm going to look at excellent for $5. I'm going to look at the Google $5 storage. You should. It's any kind of file. It can be music, a photo. It doesn't have to be a Word file or a spreadsheet or a presentation. It can be anything. I uploaded a zip file. No problem. Could share it. No problem. And because if you are a heavy Gmail user, and so many of us are, what a great product. It's free. And if you do opt for the additional storage, the only limitation is the largest file you can upload with this thing is 10 gigabytes. Now, really, how many of us are going to upload a 10 gigabyte file to Google Docs anyway? But for photos, for music, whatever you want to share, what a great way to do that. Get excited because this can save you some money. And for many home users, you don't need 20 gigs of cloud storage. I get that, but why not? Why not? I think it's a great product. I can't recommend it enough. It's called InSync. So if you got a Gmail account, you got a Google Apps account, Try it out. Don't cost you anything. You get a free one gig of cloud storage with Google anyway, so try it. Upload speed is important, and it is quick. I'll tell you that right now. It's really, really as quick as you're going to find. So there you have it. InSync, try it. You're going to like it. I'm really, really impressed. Okay. This is, I'm going to get to the main topic of today's show. And I'm going to tell you a story. And it comes in several parts. I believe, as a business owner, and having owned several companies in the past, that business that does business in America has a certain social obligation to our country and our citizens. And if you're in the UK, the same way, in Europe, whatever country you're in, you've got a certain social responsibility to those around you. Do no harm. Do no harm. That's something I believe in. Unfortunately, not everyone thinks that way. And that's why I want to talk a little bit this afternoon about Foxconn. And I've got a clip. It was taken from a documentary about Foxconn. And I'm just going to share this brief 2-minute clip with you so you can kind of get an idea of what we're dealing with. And then we'll go into a little bit more detail about them.
本来在富士康就流传这样一句话嘛，女人当男人用嘛，男人就当机器用，就这样的。
我说我们起得比地道嘛，睡得比狗安嘛，吃得比猪长嘛。
今天晚上发生在成都富士康车间的爆炸，最新的消息是2人死亡，16人受伤。
发生事故的地点是工厂区3楼，生产平板电脑、铝制材料后背的打磨生产车间。爆炸原因初步查明是打磨的铝制粉尘在管道内堆积，遇电器开关打火，在排风筒内引起爆炸的。
肯定向他们帮助我们一下，了解一下我们，了解一下我们这工人是怎么生活的。
其实人性化不是喊出来的，是做出来的。
Okay. Not exactly pleasant stuff to look at. Foxconn is a Taiwanese-owned company, started in business in 1974. Currently has 13 factories in 9 Chinese cities. The largest is Shenzhen, China. It has factories in Eastern Europe, Central America, as well as in Asia. The largest factory in China is in Shenzhen. Employs between 300 to 450,000 people. They got started making electrical connections for computer parts, particularly that was the Atari 2600 that helped launch the company. They've had a number of worker suicides. In January, 150 workers in Wuhan threatened to commit suicide. This is the plant that makes the Microsoft Xbox. Here's a list of some of their customers: Acer, Apple, ASRock, Asus, Barnes & Noble, Cisco, Dell, Amazon, EVGA, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, IBM, Lenovo, Logitech, Microsoft, MSI, Motorola, Netgear, Nintendo, Nokia, Panasonic, Philips, Sharp, Sony Ericsson, Vizio, to name a few. This is a company that builds the gadgets and gizmos that we love to buy. Baggerhurst says this is a part of the electronic assembly that no one wants to talk about. I agree with you, and I think there should be some awareness of the working conditions in these plants. Now, recently, I don't have this video, but recently I've seen a video of Steve Jobs addressing issues at Foxconn, totally taking a different spin on it. Seen the factory, the great factory. It had restaurants and it had movie theaters and swimming pools. But the reality is that there's a lot of Chinese, a lot of underage Chinese kids, 12 and 13-year-olds, reporting for work at Foxconn, or as what Newt Gingrich would say, teaching them the work ethic. Just kidding. I'm just picking on Newt. It's pretty horrible. These folks work up to 34-hour straight shifts, standing up with cameras watching them. And they sleep in about a 12-foot by 12-foot room with 15 bunks in there. And they work at least 13 days straight before they get a day off, and they're paid about 75 cents an hour. These are the people that make the goodies and gadgets that we love. And they make a bunch of them, whether it's the PlayStation 3, an Xbox, an iPhone, an iPad, a laptop, a television set. It's being made by Foxconn. Now, Steve Jobs had also spoke with President Obama before his death. There was a dinner. And Steve told him that one of the reasons why we can't do stuff in America isn't the labor cost. Let's get over that. It's not so much the labor cost, is that for example, when Apple decided to ramp up iPhones and iPads, they needed 8,700 industrial engineers to get the plant ready to go. It took 15 days for Foxconn to find and put to work 8,700 engineers. He said it'd take at least 9 months here. So it was the ability to scale. But let's think about that for a minute. What really happened in China is that these industrial engineers were more or less kidnapped by the Chinese government, put on buses and driven to Foxconn, say go to work. When they decided to build a new factory in China, because there's another thing Steve Jobs admired so much about doing business in China, is that you can get a factory built in no time, and they can. Because they will come into your neighborhood, or Foxconn wants a plant, show up with cops and tell you got a half an hour to get out because the bulldozers are down the street. So it's no wonder that you can get something done when you have a communist regime more or less forcing people into slave labor. Now, I'm not talking about this to make people feel bad about wanting to own or already owning an iPad or an iPhone because we don't really think about it. We don't think about where it comes. But I advocate social responsibility. And it all begins with awareness. And we really do, as a society, owe the people who put this stuff together at least the same basic human rights that we enjoy here. We shouldn't tolerate people used as slave labor, children used as slave labor, work to the point of exhaustion or death just so we can get another gadget inexpensively. It makes good business sense to build what you buy rather than trusting it to foreign lands to produce these things. We should always accept the status quo. So what do we do? Do we feel bad because we buy these things? No. But what we can do is create social awareness. Our country, the United States, I can't speak for the UK, but the United States, we would never tolerate a company with such deplorable working conditions here, but yet we're just fine with it, apparently. Not us as people, but as a collective. Our companies, our corporations are just dandy with it in the pursuit of the bottom line. Would we pay 25-30% more for an item if we knew it was made by workers in our own country under safe working conditions? I mean, what does it take for us to get our heads out of the sand on these issues? Now, take Apple's initiative for textbooks in the school. We got 55 million kids, K through 12, going to 130,000 different schools in North America, and Apple's vision is to put an iPad in every one of those hands. As taxpayers, shouldn't we say, wait a second, before we take our tax dollars to buy our kids iPads that are manufactured by kids or something inherently wrong? We can put the pressure on the school districts and so forth to say, only if Apple and the Ciscos and the Logitechs and the Nokias that do business in America agree to have some form of social responsibility in their suppliers, that proves that their suppliers are providing safe and humane working conditions for their employees. Don't use my tax dollars to buy equipment from companies employing essentially slave labor to build these devices. Maybe perhaps we should think about boycotts of some of these companies until they come up with a hard and firm social policy that they can live with. In America, it's a crime, and you are a criminal if you know if someone else is committing a crime and you remain silent. It's a crime. And yet the executives of companies such as Apple Computer, Microsoft, Intel, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, by the way, your Kindle Fires are also made by Foxconn. They are fully aware of the working conditions of Foxconn and companies that supply Foxconn. In effect, if this was happening here in America, the executives of these companies would be charged as criminals. And yet they do not. That's a fact. Should we help enriching companies by buying products that cost American jobs with foreign slave labor? That is an inconvenient truth that we must face. We are watching our middle class disappear in our country. We are losing our industrial base by leaps and bounds every day. You cannot say Americans and Europeans are not competitive in the workforce if we are pitted against governments that are run by communist regimes willing to kidnap children to put them to work for the cause. We can't compete against that. It's just not about money. It's just not about the price. It's also countries that don't have clean water or clean air could care less about safe living conditions for the people as long as the regime gets their money. There's a lot of variables. So how can American and European workers and workers in highly industrialized countries compete when people are being literally forced at gunpoint into slavery to produce electronic gizmos and gadgets for the rest of the world? Maybe we ought to think twice the next time we cheer the earnings reports from companies such as Microsoft, Apple, and others, because a lot of those earnings were based on the back of children or people being literally worked to death. It's nothing to be proud of, folks. It's nothing to be proud of. It's nothing to cheer about. The last question I come up with is, can an ethical, socially responsible technology company in manufacturing, can they compete in the 21st century against such horrible, horrible practices? Those are the questions. As a business guy myself, I know that our workers in America are some of the most productive, loyal, hardworking people in the world, but they cannot compete against a communist regime holding a gun to somebody's head, making them get on a bus in the middle of the night and head off to an unfinished factory to start making the next gadget or gizmo for a company. I'm not pontificating here. This is a real socially important thing. Hi, Code, and welcome to the show. This is nothing to be proud of. So the next time you hear people stand up and cheer about how much money Apple made in a quarter, just remember where that money really come from. At the expense of American labor. This is a company who most bulk of their profits are made right here and prides themselves in providing jobs and building factories overseas. And we cheer. That's lunacy. The jobs, I know, I'm smart enough to know that not all manufacturing jobs are going to come back to America. I get that. But the very minimum we can expect a policy that the people that do work in those factories are not children, they're not worked to death, they're not beaten or starved in order for me to save or for Apple to make a couple more dollars in profit. That's what I believe. And American business people have a responsibility to help the country that provided them the opportunity to grow their business through its defense, through its social policies, and through its treatment of its employees. And yes, it's worth it to me to pay a little bit more for a gadget or gizmo made by somebody that's making a living wage and working in safe working conditions than it is for me to save a few dollars and get it cheaper. You know, I was talking to my wife this morning. She said, Bruce, that's all fine and noble, but you're not going to quit buying iPads. You're not going to quit buying this stuff because of this. I said, Cindy, I'm going to think when I do buy the next gadget, I'm going to think a little bit more about where it come from. And I'm going to make this a cause of mine that you can be an ethical business person and still treat people well. I think you can do that. Trip Trapper writes in the chat room, last week I come in here that Foxconn was setting up a factory here. But I also have to add that this week the Brazilian government contractors with Foxconn were temporarily suspended until they sign a term of conduct and follow local labor laws. Wait and see. Foxconn does not do well in countries that enforce strict labor laws. That's why communist regimes, they got factories in Eastern Europe, Bosnia, I believe there's a plant. There's a plant in Mexico, a failed state. Anywhere they can go where the government can either be bought off, where people can be literally enslaved without punishment, is where you're going to find Foxconn going. That is my belief. We owe it to ourselves. But before we rush and tell our schools to go buy iPads, let's make sure that before they spend our tax money to buy these with, that Apple is held more accountable for the working conditions of Foxconn. More socially aware. A statement, a signed statement that they will not do business with a company that violates basic human rights for profit. Bagger says North Korea could be next. And you know what? I read this article, New York Times. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm going to say that it is. It's believable. You're absolutely right. Kim Jong-il's regime has sold people to Russia to work in Siberia in the timber industry for that you have to go and work for 10 years. The regime took 90% of the wages that these people earn, and they work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's slavery. By any other name, it's still slavery. North Korea has industrial zones where they work hand in hand with Chinese companies as even cheaper prison labor than what they get in China. It's horrible. But we have a responsibility as a society to hold the companies that want to do business in our country, hold their feet to the fire, and ask them to pledge to commit to becoming socially responsible in the humane treatment of their workers and those around them. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. It's a lot to think about, and I'm not talking about this to make people feel bad. It's a reality. But it all begins with awareness. And the more aware we are, change will happen. And hopefully for the better, and hopefully sooner. That's today's show here at Fertile Tech Live. And before I go, I always like to share something I think a little bit funny with you. So here it is, your moment of Zen.
The business desk back at the Globe really wants to know what you think of the iPad and whether Microsoft is going to start catching up to some of these Apple innovations, particularly around the tablet type computers.
Well, tablet computing is an innovation where Microsoft's been ahead every step of the way. So you want to look at tablets and touchscreens and how students use those. That's a Windows phenomenon.
Right. Gotcha.
It's not my full-time work at this point. So
yeah, what do you think? Have you fooled around with the iPad at all? What do you think of it?
It's not my full-time focus now.
I totally understand that, but I'm still just curious whether you think it's a good tool or not.
Yeah, no comment.